So, this is Art as a Covenant with God, or Art as Cultural Marxism. Yes, please, a call for an artist to imagine utopia.
The leaky ship, the leaky ship, the leaky ship, the leaky ship.
Well, the artists articulate, the artists are the people who first articulate the unknown. And so the role of artists in a healthy culture is to bring to public awareness elements of being that have not yet entered the collective consciousness. So you could imagine that we're all living on an island, and many of us are in the center of the island, far enough away so maybe we can't even see the shoreline and we can't see the ocean. That's where our borders end, but we're distant from it. The artists are right on the edge, and they're expanding the landscape. They're moving the culture forward. They're moving the culture forward into the unknown, and they do that by translating what is as of yet unimaginable but sensed into what is at least imaginable and representing image and drama and literature. That's the precursor to its full formulation and articulated philosophy and thought. And that's what artists do. They're problem solvers, problem detectors, and problem solvers. That's what true artists do. And they're always trying to solve problems. There's a great documentary that was made about Picasso, great documentary that was painting Picasso. Unfortunately, I can't remember the name of it. I think it was made in 1957. It's available on YouTube. It's available on YouTube. Picasso is filmed making a painting on a window so that you can see exactly what he's doing, and you can watch him work with ideas. He paints something in and then he erases it. He paints over it, then he paints again and he paints over it. He moves the figures around on the canvas. It's a window pane, as I said, and you can see him working out problems and solutions to problems using his visual imagination. And the artistic product, the painting, is the consequence of that rather than the aim of it. The aim is to formulate the problems and to work out the solutions, and the artistic product, the painting, is the byproduct of that, not the aim. And so artists move us forward into the unknown, and you can see
that if the project is what I said it was, it's what I said it was, it's what I said it was in the sets of lectures before, trying to create a human life that's free and so on, it becomes crucially important if the culture itself is beginning to, as it were, destroy, deconstruct, or disrupt the very conditions for being human at all. Because it becomes pointless to talk about free humans in the absence of humans.
Artists are unbelievably productive economically, but it's very, very hard for them to monetize their productivity. So even though what they produce can be of incalculable value, it's very difficult for them to get any of the economic value that they're produced actually directed towards them. It's a major problem with trade openness as a mode of being in the world.
Because it becomes pointless to talk about free humans in the absence of humans.
The role of that culture is what might be characterized and has been characterized by the Frankfurt School as psychoanalysis in reverse. Namely, that the parts of us that are reflected, self-consciously creating, become unconscious. Just psychoanalysis in reverse gear. That the moments of lucidity and clarity we thought we had about ourselves are now to be filled in with stories that we pick up largely from the mass culture. Therapy now belongs, for me at least, to that terrain. And I have in mind all the various programs, projects, self-help books, 12-step plans, 10-step plans, fad diet, happy books, how to find your true self books, and so on.
I mean, with young people, you want to say, look, there's not much to you. You're only 20 and you're kind of useless. But that's because you're only 20, that doesn't mean you're not full of potential. That potential needs to manifest itself so that you can turn into something that's of world-beating significance. But in order to tell a young person that credibly, you have to say, look, there are true qualitative distinctions between things, and you're just getting started. There are heights that you can ascend to that are genuinely high, which also means they're above where you are now. but that gives your life, the fact that there are those things to pursue, gives your life deep meaning and significance, and gives your struggle nobility and validity. And the postmodernists, Neo-Marxists, as far as I'm concerned, are absolute enemies of qualitative distinctions, and so what they do is destroy everyone's ambition.
No one, Derrida, or anyone else believes that every view is as good as every other.
What the hell are we going to do?
That's only a view we discuss in freshman philosophy class in order to quickly refute it.
What the hell are we going to do?
No one believes
What are we going to do?
There are no defenders.
What are we going to do?
Since this tape will be going out, if we run into one, it will be interesting. But we will likely find that person in one of the institutions we co-discuss, rather than in some seminar. That's where we find them. Anybody believes it.
There's a moment when a guy named the Yellow Man is shot in an apartment, and then Jeffrey, the main character, wants to be better. The guy's dead, but he's just standing there. There's no explanation. He's just standing there. And it's almost classically French, Franco-ballistically surreal. And yet it seemed absolutely true and absolutely appropriate. And there was this, I know I'm taking a lot of time to answer your question, there was this way in which I all of a sudden realized that the point of being postmodern or being avant-garde or whatever wasn't to follow a certain kind of tradition, that all that stuff is BS imposed by critics and followers afterwards, that what the really great artists do, and it sounds very tragic to say that out loud, but what the really great artists do is they're entirely themselves. They're entirely themselves, they've got their own vision, their own way of fracturing reality, and then if it's authentic and true, you will feel it in your nerve endings. And this is what Blue Velvet did for me. I'm not suggesting it would do it for you, the viewer, but Lynch very much helped snap me out of a kind of adolescent delusion that I was in about what sort of avant-garde art could be.
Okay, so now we come to the plane. We had our point, we have our line, now we have a plane. According to the same process by Alpha-Bung, by this lifting into and negation of negation, the truth of the line is the plane. So of course here now we have our line, but our line isn't just a line, it's a series of points that also extend out to infinity. So if you turn it, you have a plane, and here he's actually quoting Hegel. The line consequently passes into the plane, which, on the one hand, is a determinateness opposed to line and point, and so surface simply is such. This is to say, if you have a plane, it just takes up everything, and so there's no line or point within it whatsoever. But on the other hand, it is the sublated negation of space. It is thus restoration of the spatial totality, which now contains the negative moment within itself. So while I'm not expecting that anyone actually is there to a moment of clarity, I will tell you that this, in fact, is the moment where the hierarchical distinction between presence and absence, between the differentiated and indifferentiated, starts to break down. The one is starting to be the other. And now, because you're all looking at me perplexed, as though I've just been, I don't know, speaking some incomprehensible barbar language, which perhaps I have, let's see if we can do this in a non-linguistic way. Well, it'll require a little linguistics. So let me start with our point. And so we have, our point is moving away on me. Our point became a line. Hold on.
Utopian speculation aims at a radical transformation of the present. Speculation aims, in that respect, it remains the sibling of revolutionary thought that today occupies the place of a revolutionary politics, which has not yet fully re-emerged from the transformations of globalization and postmodernity of finance capital on a world scale. Utopian thinking demands a revision of Gramsci's great slogan. It might run like this: cynicism of the intellect, utopianism of the will.
Derrida himself later said, no, in fact, what I'm saying is there's nothing outside the text, it's all context. There's no inside or outside of the text. He gets so far inside the text that he gets himself way outside.
Accept history in what is called its materiality. Yeah, in other words, along with all of its contingencies, its moments of luck, the strange and bizarre things that happen. I mean, even Marx does this when he writes the history of the rise of capitalism. It just turns out to be fortuitous that gold is found in the New World, which then can be sent back to Europe to build merchant capital. Well, if over here they had found cow chips only or buffalo chips, then that contingency would have affected history. And that seems to me to just be not something that could have been predicted by a rational narrative. They happened to find gold.
It's second rate at least. It's terror too, because people are afraid of beauty. But the idea that art is, the conservatives really have a problem with this in particular, because conservatives tend not to be that creative. And it's a mystery by temperament. It's a mystery to me, because they should be concerned with economic development, and beauty is so unbelievably crucial to economic development. It just yells out at you, you know. So anyway, so that's what artists are doing. And so one of the things I would say is buy a damn piece of art, you know. Find one that really speaks to you, and buy a piece of art, because you invite that into your life, and it's a lookout if you do it. If it's a real piece of art, because you'll also get a little introduction to the artist, and then that'll seep into your life, and that'll change things like mad. But it's unbelievably worth it, because it opens your eyes to the domain of the transcendent. That's the right way of thinking about it. A real piece of art is a window into the transcendent. That's what it is. And you need that in your life, because you're finite and limited and bounded right by your ignorance and your lack of knowing. And unless you can make a connection to the transcendent, then you don't have the strength to prevail. And that's part of the covenant. That's part of the covenant of God.
And if you follow the history of Western metaphysics, being is the demiurgos, being is God, being is whatever is uncovered by the empirical science, being is sciences, being is this, being is non-existent. Whatever we've tried to fill in the blank with, we have not yet reached closure. That's why I said that philosophy is a funny endeavor. It has a 2,500-year history of failure, and yet it continues. So obviously it's not quite in the spirit of capitalism to engage in this enterprise. It's a long time to run a failing business, 2,500 years. This blank can't be filled in. Being is, can't be filled in. The blank can't be filled in. Why not? I mean, we want an argument. We don't want this. I mean, the first thing is that we've noticed that no one's ever successfully filled it in. That's the first thing we notice. That, the history of philosophy has not yet presented us with final wisdom, total coverage, and ultimate truth. We know that, so that's step one, is to know that. See, philosophy is not like building a house where you start with a firm foundation and build it up and you're finished and you walk off, and that's philosophy. Philosophy under the heading of deconstruction is housework, which means every day the floor is to be swept again. The dishes have to be done again, and I'll be damned, the next day it's just like that again, and it's just like that again, and it's just like that again. So deconstruction, if I wanted to compare it as a practice to some other practice, it would be housework. It doesn't get finished.
And the equality of men and women becomes a universal social reality, so inevitable that it seems to be a mere fact of nature rather than a lofty ideal of some kind. The gradual transformation of subjectivities as they adapt or are reprogrammed to new infrastructural realities is called cultural revolution.
If we don't have enough hierarchies of competence for everyone, then it's up to the creative people to produce some new ones.
Thank you. I don't know what all those clippings were in there. Those weren't normally in there. I think it's with the sound system, but I let it go. I thought it was an interesting little glitch.
Glitch art?
Yeah. So I'm interested to see what questions I will be asked, if any. I'd be happy to answer any, if I can.
I noticed you put in some railway track-like lines that meant perspective in the lower left corner, but then you painted over them.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's true. When creating something, you are trying out ideas, and sometimes they don't work. Sometimes they do work, and they get messed up in the process of creating more. And I think that speaks to the whole idea that I wanted to try and encapsulate here. This is a very messy painting. I think it's fun. It's a little bit messier than I would normally do, a little bit faster than I would normally do. So I wanted to undermine some of Peterson's ideas about art, because if I heard them decontextualized without knowing Peterson, I think I would be attracted to them. Most of the people I know that have been attracted to Peterson are creative types. If they like his conservatism, it has come later in their Peterson understanding. They were attracted to that, and then later the conservatism kind of creeps in and rips them into something else, rather than saying, well, maybe we have to paint over that. Maybe these hierarchies are here, and like Picasso painting on the window pane, maybe we have to rearrange that. Maybe we have to wipe it over, or just rearrange it. So yeah, I had no understanding of what I was going to paint. I obviously selected my colors, my tools, the sound, and I brought some stuff to collage with me. And some of that are things I created while here, such as these pieces, during some of the other talks over the last 2 days. So yeah.
Well, I threw in on impulse a page from my notebook.
Yeah, and that is in there.
One of the prominence of that, you've got it. And everything that Peterson uses, or rather misuses, has a provenance. But people, his audience, have no clue. They don't have that depth of history.
Yeah, it's true. Any other questions?
What were some of the other voices? I assume that was Peterson at the very end.
Yeah, there was a lot of Peterson in there at the very beginning and the very end. The other voices were Rick Roderick, a professor that taught in, well, he was from West Texas. He taught a couple different places. He's passed now. Those lectures are from the mid-90s or maybe the early 90s.
Yeah.
And I think it's telling how much they speak to Peterson today. Like, you could almost pretend like he's directly replying to Peterson when he's explaining postmodernism.
Right.
And then I used David Foster Wallace talking about his experience with seeing Blue Velvet in the movie theaters and changing his conception of postmodern or avant-garde art. And I think that's a good clip just because of what he says as well as a postmodern artist, Wallace. But also there's some fun stuff to play there if you're gonna give into Peterson at all, like some synchronicities with the lobster references, or because Foster's famous essay, Consider the Lobster.
Mm-hmm.
And then let's see, there was Kleinberg, I believe his name is. He's a philosopher, or a professor at Wesley University, I think. He's a Derridian and a historian. And that was him talking about Derrida and the point and the line and the plane, and their interconnectedness. And then Frederick Jameson, who is one of the popularizers of the term postmodernism. His book, Postmodernism, or the Logic of Late Capitalism, I believe it's called. And those were clips from his talk about reimagining Utopia. He put out a book a few years ago. About think about Utopia, write about it. It might be a personal thing, and that's kind of what I want to encourage artists to do art with that in mind. Knowing that you're not going to create the perfect system, and of course it's not a political project. It has some politics to it, has some philosophy and sociology to it, but I wouldn't say, hey, don't vote or don't join the DSA or don't organize it all, just make art or write stories that thinks about how life could be different. But to combat the capitalist realism climate that we're in, I do think it's important, and I think it could play a vital role in starting the imagination. And so Zizek recently said that how much he hated Utopia, even though he really endorsed Jameson's book. And he said something like, we'll never build heaven on earth. Maybe socialism will be a slightly better hell. And if you believe that, okay, write me a dystopian novel or some comics that show me a different hell, that show a hell that isn't about labor exploitation,
right.
And so on and so on.
My idea of utopia has always been that no matter how much better things get, you will be misunderstood, you will be betrayed, you will suffer, you will die, but you might be in prettier surroundings while it's happening.
Absolutely, yeah.
But it's not a cure-all.
Right.
And this notion of utopia is a cure. First of all, if utopia was really a cure-all, it would be so boring.
Absolutely.
You'd want to leave.
Yeah. I completely agree with that. In Jameson's book as well, he kind of says that. He's like, look, I'm not even though I'm calling this utopia, I'm calling it utopia because it's a different social order, or trying to imagine a different social order. I'm not saying I'm creating an organic whole society. He even goes so far as to say that there should be zones in cities, or maybe whole cities where there are no laws, where people are allowed to murder and all sorts of stuff, if that's where they want to live. I don't know if I would go that far.
We're all conscripted into the military.
Yeah, and we're all conscripted
but not necessarily to kill. It's
not necessarily to kill, yeah. I loved the book, and then watching his talk on it, I realized some of the problems I had with the book were actually supposed to be jokes, but the tone didn't come through, because when he's explaining some of them, he's laughing. Like he's like, and for the pacifists and conscientious objectors, we'll put them in charge of arms development or something like that. And when I read the book, I was like, wait, what? Why wouldn't? Okay, that doesn't really. And then in the talk, he's laughing for it. And I'm like, oh, I get it. You're just being playful.
There's a lot of playfulness in it.
Yeah.
Actually,
I really enjoyed that book as well. Anything else? Cool.
Oh, just one funny aside about Jameson. I have a friend who is a professor here at Boise State. She went to school with Jameson's daughter. Yeah. And you know how you think of your parents? That's how Jameson's.
Well, I'm sure.
It's like, I can't, everyone tells me how brilliant my dad is, and I know he is, but he'll read a couple articles in a book and then listen to some punk rock records, and then he'll write something that everyone says is the most seminal thing ever written on punk music. She's just bewildered because it's her dad.
That's a trophy of a compliment.
I know. So once again, what I was saying, like, you will be misunderstood, you will be disrespected. Jameson is the proof here.
Oh, absolutely.
You still can't convince your kids.
That's pretty funny.
I know, I thought it was hilarious.
Yeah, and so, I used, like I said, this is a little bit messier, but I tend to use a lot of chaotic and stream of consciousness production when making art. I do digital stuff as well, which is less stream of consciousness just because of the way the medium works. I don't know, I haven't found a way to do that. And I think that's important as well. I don't think you can organize politics like that. We're not gonna have a stream of consciousness law or anything like that. And I think that's something that Peterson kind of gets at, that attracts people. Tells them this, not only the self-authoring, but also to dive into their unconscious, however he misrepresents subconscious, like what the unconscious is. And so I think that's good for leftists and for artists in general to kind of have a better, or to have less expectation of perfection and want to play with it, and understand that error might be necessary. So you can follow me on Instagram. It's the @art.o.dirt, D-I-R-T. Facebook, Dirt, Son of Earth. That is I. I am involved with the Slimy Clearing production, do some art for their videos, so check out their YouTube channel as well. And hit me up if you have any requests for digital art, or want to just talk about art theory. I am completely a self-taught artist as well, as that may be apparent in my messy style. And I think that's important for art as well, to kind of trust some of those instincts that we have, but not not wholesale, to push them. You trust the instincts and the deepness of what you can produce to challenge yourself and not to rely on what's already been established. So that's the big thing I couldn't really fit in. I wanted kind of to get into the Jungian notion of ontological incompleteness. And in Dreaming Dangerously, or whatever that book was called, at the end he talks about how there's a plate and is like that you eat off of. It has a Islamic phrase on it about how you can't change fate, as in you can't change that there is a fate, but you can change what fate itself is. Like that what you do can actively change the future, and that's what I want to really push people to think about doing. But yeah, I couldn't really get that into there or explore that more without adding 15 minutes, which we just didn't have time for it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's second rate at least. It's terror too, because people are afraid of beauty, but the idea that art is, the conservatives really have a problem with this in particular, because conservatives tend not to be that creative, and it's a mystery by temperament. It's a mystery to me, because they should be concerned with economic development, and beauty is so unbelievably crucial to economic development. It just yells out at you, you know? So anyway, so that's what artists are doing. And so one of the things I would say is buy a damn piece of art, you know? Find one that really speaks to you, and buy a piece of art, because you invite that into your life, and it's a lookout if you do it. If it's a real piece of art, because you'll also get a little introduction to the artist, and then that'll seep into your life, and that'll change things like mad. But it's unbelievably worth it, because it opens your eyes to the domain of the transcendent. That's the right way of thinking about it. A real piece of art is a window into the transcendent. That's what it is. And you need that in your life, because you're finite and limited and bounded right by your ignorance and your lack of knowing. And unless you can make a connection to the transcendent, then you don't have the strength to prevail. And that's part of the covenant. That's part of the covenant of God.
And if you follow the history of Western metaphysics, being is the demiurgos, being is God, being is